Hi guys, it's Han here. We all know that there was a time when American minivan products were very popular among home users in the US market. In recent years, various manufacturers have cancelled their own minivan products for their own purposes. Currently, there are only 4 companies on the market that are still having American minivans. Many automobile manufacturers claims to replace the minivan product with a medium-sized SUV product. Can a medium-sized 3-row SUV be the replacement for the minivan product? Today we will check it out. Thanks for Jay's help. Buy Toyota from Jay. Welcome to subscribe my car reviews channel both in English and Chinese. Thank you for subscribing, liking, comment, sharing, and light up the bell. One of the models we are going to check out today is the Lexus TX 500h that we have seen before and experienced in the past few days. It is a high-end trim 4-wheel drive, comes standard with F-Sport tuned performance suspension and performance shock absorbers. Equipped with rear-wheel steering, Mark Levinson audio system, panoramic sunroof, 255/45R, 22 wheels. The MSRP of this vehicle, including shipping, is $78,660. It was finally assembled at the US plant. The other one is a used car for sale by Jay, a 2022 Toyota Sienna Limited trim, front-wheel drive, equipped with JBL audio system, 235/60R 18 wheels. This Sienna was rolled off the assembly line in the US plant in October 2021. It had driven over 50,000 miles when I drove it. Logically speaking, it is not fair to put these two cars together. The price of TX 500h is much more expensive than the Sienna, but in terms of space, this TX is the largest Toyota series in the family, the model with the largest interior space. Sienna, which I believe there is no need to talk more about. Sienna and its previous models are the model and benchmark for minivan models in the American automobile market. Especially this generation of models has been hard to find inventory on market since they were launched. If list the external dimensions of the two vehicles together, we can see that the minivan model and the Sienna model do not suffer at all in terms of external dimensions. The TX model is said to be the SUV with the largest interior space in the family. Compared with the Sienna in terms of appearance and size data, it does not take much advantage. In terms of wheelbase, overall length and width, the Sienna's number is even better than that of the TX. Coupled with the one-box design of the minivan model, theoretically we can believe that the internal space of the minivan model will have better performance. Let's check it out in a moment. In terms of curb weight, the gasoline version of the TX 350 is actually not much different from the minivan model, with the lower version being slightly lighter. The curb weight of the hybrid TX 500h is much heavier than the minivan model. In terms of power parameters, we can see that the Sienna is relatively weak. In fact, the Sienna does not need to be compared with the TX. Just compared with competing products of 6-cylinder engines of the same level on the market, its power parameters are relatively weak. Even the TX 350, which is not good at power parameters, has better parameters than the Sienna, let alone the TX 500h. The power parameters of Honda Odyssey is between Sienna and TX 350. Maximum towing capacity of the TX series is 5,000 pounds, while Sienna is 3,500 pounds. The EPA announced that the comprehensive fuel consumption of the 2.4 turbo TX 350 and Odyssey are about the same under combined conditions. The overall fuel consumption of Sienna and TX 500h is not much different. This is still our point of view before. Under similar levels and weights, under the same technical route of powertrain, the fuel consumption of small horse-drawn big carts and large horse-drawn small cars is actually not much different. The advantages of Sienna are reflected in the maximum cruising range announced by the EPA. MSRP. The price is the topic we'll never get around to. Everyone knows that in the past, the price of a sedan was lower than that of a minivan for vehicles of the same platform. The price of a minivan of the same platform is lower than that of an SUV. Although the price of minivan products has increased a lot in the past 2 years, especially the Sienna model, but compared to the new Grand Highlander and the new TX, the price of Sienna can only be regarded as a younger brother. This can also be seen why every automobile manufacturer now does not like to launch minivan models in the US market. This SUV can really fetch a high price. Looking at it this way, the value for money of Honda Odyssey is highlighted. I hope the next generation Odyssey can maintain its cost-effectiveness advantage. The appearance designs of the two vehicles are of completely different genres. The minivan model adopts a one-box design. Many male friends told me that when he drives a minivan, he is more afraid of others thinking he has a house daddy temperament. Even though you can see that the design of today's new Sienna is more masculine than previous generations of products. The angular lines are clearer, and the design is tougher. But compared to the new Grand Highlander and TX models, it still seems to have some house daddy qualities. Of course, I think house daddy is just house daddy, and there is nothing wrong with it. It is more important to put the family first. The main idea in the design of both the TX model and the Grand Highlander is very the same, which is as big as possible. Putting the TX and Sienna together, we can see that the two vehicles actually have certain same design elements. For example, the center grille is designed to move downwards appropriately, which has the effect of lowering the visual center of gravity. Both vehicles have a forehead design on the front. Although the foreheads appear differently in different brands and at different times, the style and feel are generally the same. The difference is that although the Sienna's front cabin has been designed to be relatively independent compared to its previous generation model, its front cabin is still relatively short compared to this TX. The one-box shape is relatively obvious. At the same time, you can see that the overall center of gravity of Sienna is relatively low, while the TX model is relatively high. The minimum ground clearance of the Sienna is 6.3 inches and the minimum ground clearance of the TX 500H is 7.99 inches, which we just checked it out about the specifications. When we look at it from the side, we can see that the Sienna is not smaller than the TX in terms of body size, except that it is slightly shorter than the TX in dimensions. Coupled with the lower chassis of Sienna, we can theoretically judge that its internal space should be better than that of TX. The TX is a fairly standard SUV in design, and the front cabin appears to be relatively slender. The Sienna integrates the passenger cabin and front cabin design, but the design is far less integrated than its predecessor. After opening all the doors, we can see that the opening angles of the Sienna's front door and the four doors of the TX are very large, but not exaggerated. The two windows in the front row of both vehicles are double-layer glass, and the windows in the second row are single-layer glass. As a minivan model, one of Sienna's daily artifacts is its side-sliding doors. No matter how to talk about it, side-sliding doors, I personally think they are much more convenient than the side-opening doors of the second row of SUVs. Opening the doors in a tight parking space is better than the TX's second row doors. Another thing you can clearly see is that the minimum ground clearance of the Sienna model is smaller than that of the TX. When getting in and out of the vehicle, it is obviously not as tall as the TX. It will be much more convenient for children and the elderly. Sienna also has a very user-friendly design with a long armrest, which is convenient for the elderly and children to use. The floor height of the Grand Highlander and TX are relatively higher than that of the Sienna. Getting into the car like this is a little more strenuous than Sienna. Let me give you my height as a reference. There is no pressure for me to get in and off these two vehicles. I don't need to use any pedal devices. This TX is equipped with 22-inch wheels. This Sienna is 18-inch wheels. The 18 wheel is actually quite big when you look at it alone, but compared with this TX it looks smaller. Frankly speaking, on a daily life vehicle, the cost of 18-inch tires is also less. Brake system. Sienna's front brake is equipped with a 12.9-inch diameter ventilated disc, and the rear is a 12.5-inch ventilated disc. In the driving experience, the Sienna's braking performance is average, but the TX 350's braking performance is also average. This TX 500H is a high-end model and performs very well. The front is equipped with a diameter of 15.7 inches of ventilated disc, which is larger than that of the 350. The rear is a ventilated disc with a diameter of 13.3 inches. From the rear, we can see that the Sienna does not suffer any disadvantage compared to the TX in terms of overall width. Moreover, the Sienna's chassis is lower than that of the TX, and the TX's low front and high rear shape is more exaggerated than the Sienna. So we can see that the Sienna is smaller than the TX in terms of rear height. From the rear styling, we can see that because Sienna is an earlier new generation product of the family, its design is relatively complicated. First of all, the rear shape of the TX model is the same as that of the Grand Highlander, with square and right-angled lines. In addition, it incorporates many of the latest design elements that are currently popular in Lexus. Overall, there are some differences in the rear design of the two vehicles. Key to the Lexus family. Keys to the Toyota brand. After opening the tailgate, it is clear at a glance which of the two vehicles has higher living attributes. Although the chassis of the Sienna is relatively low, its passability is definitely not as good as the TX. But I am not sure who can use this product for off-roading, because the Sienna's vehicle height is relatively low, its chassis is also relatively low, and it does not have a low front and high rear shape, so the lower edge of the trunk is relatively low. There is a pit at the back, which is also one of the traditional designs of American minivans. This way, when you lift something heavy, you don't have to lift it very high to put it in the trunk. As for SUV products like this, in fact, it is not just the TX, but all medium-sized SUVs are also designed in this way. The body is relatively tall, the chassis is relatively high, the body is relatively low in the front and high in the rear, and the lower edge of its trunk appears relatively high. If you want to lift a heavy object, the lift should be higher than Sienna. In terms of depth, you can see that Sienna is very good, whether it is the depth below or above. We also check out the TX before, and the depth below can be said to be sufficient, a full arm's depth. The space above is not as exciting as Sienna's. The tailgate lining, there is a very large speaker on the Sienna. There are 2 speakers on the TX, and a light. The button controls the third row, the subwoofer, 120 volt, 1500 watt 3-phase power outlet. There is a hook on it, not any functionality on the right side. There is a very small light on the left and right. When the cover lifted, underneath is a simple vehicle tool with a retractable curtain. It has a spare tire, which is under this cover. The space performance after the third row seats are folded down. The space performance after the second and third rows are folded down at the same time. The spare tire is optional for all Sienna series. This vehicle is equipped with a spare tire. The spare tire is placed on the left side. On the lower right side are simple vehicle tools and a starting battery. This is the space performance after the third row of seats is folded down. The performance is great, both for width and height. The second row seats of this generation of Sienna cannot be removed, while the second row seats of previous generations can be removed. The central control and interior of the high-end TX 500H are basically the same as those of the TX 350. It's just that the configuration is relatively higher. All 4 windows have one-touch up and down functions. There are some buttons on the center console to the left of the steering wheel. It also has the Lexus family's the 3-in-1 linkage mode of head-up display, shortcut buttons on steering wheel and the dashboard. The shortcut buttons on the steering wheel also have 1 button and 2 functions, which can be observed to use through the interface in the heads-up display. The dashboard is also the latest style of the large Toyota series, which has 3 display modes. It is divided into 3 display areas, left, middle, and right. Each area can display different information. There are also 3 sets of memory modes. It also has driver attention monitoring. The steering wheel is an F-Sport steering wheel, which feels great in the hand. The steering wheel is thicker than the steering wheel of other versions. The 3 and 9 o'clock positions are made of perforated leather. It is more comfortable to put your hands on it. There are paddle shifters at the back. The light set has automatic on-and-off and automatic high beam function. The front wipers have rain sensing function. Rear view mirror camera. Glasses case without panoramic mirror. This central screen is also the standard configuration of the new generation of Lexus products on mid to high-end models. It integrates the air conditioner and central screen. It has normal mode, sport mode, eco mode, and custom mode. Internal 3D surround, external 3D surround, reversing view, wide-angle reversing view, front wide-angle, front view. There are 3 ports on the right, 2 for charging, 1 for data exchange, and underneath is a wireless charging pad. Pushing it open, there is a storage compartment below, a 12-volt charger socket inside. The 2 dice cup-style water cup holders can be taken out separately. The central armrest box has a relatively large volume and does not have any functionality in it. These are exactly the same as the TX 350 we checked out before. If we compare it to the TX purely in terms of configuration, we can say that the Sienna does not take advantage. After all, the price difference is huge. But if you figure out which one is suitable for living and designed for daily use, I think the Sienna is not inferior to the TX at all. This generation of Sienna has a home-like design style, which has been popular in the automobile industry for a while. The current design style of the Toyota brand is a vertical screen that goes straight to the rear. Sienna's screen is somewhat tilted toward the driver. You can see that the Sienna's center console has a relatively clear layered design. The design is more in line with the attributes of a daily car. All 4 windows have one-touch up and down functions. The buttons on the center console to the left of the steering wheel don't seem too full. There is no heads-up display. The dashboard panel still uses the form of 2 physical dials, plus a special-shaped LCD screen from the Toyota family. There is quite a lot of information displayed on the LCD screen, but the fonts are not large and appear relatively messy. Adjust via the keys on the left side of the steering wheel. The steering wheel is also the current unified style of the family, with a 3-spoke form. There are also perforated leather at 3 and 9 o'clock. The steering wheel is 4-way power adjustable. There are no paddles behind the steering wheel. The light set has automatic on and off and automatic high beam functions as well as fog lights. The front wipers do not have rain sensing function. Auto dimming rear view mirror, no glasses case. There is a very narrow panoramic mirror. This car is a 2022 model, and the software and hardware of the central screen are not the latest models of the current family. It also retains a lot of physical buttons and knobs. We won't read too much about this, because it is no longer the latest version. This car does not have a panoramic views, only a reversing view. The reversing view has 2 viewing angles. The wide-angle reversing view is still not very clear. The new generation of Toyota brand products does not integrate air conditioning control into the central screen. The 2 front seats have seat heating and ventilation functions, a wireless charging pad, a USB data exchange port. It has 4 driving modes: Sport mode, Normal mode, Eco mode, and EV mode when the battery is sufficient. The center armrest box is very large inside, both USB and Type-C charging ports inside. As a TX product of the Lexus family, its price is much higher than that of the Sienna. If we compare side by side, the configuration of this TX is higher than that of Sienna. Another thing is that it feels better than Sienna in caring for the front row driver and passenger, including the feel of the seats. Moreover, it's also equipped with an F-Sport seat, which is relatively better at protecting and wrapping the body. The car itself has relatively high configurations in the TX, and its materials feel more upscale than the Sienna. The upper part is made of soft material, and there is moderate suede embellishment, but the lower part is also made of pure hard plastic. Compared with previous American minivan products, this TX model reflects the emphasis on front row drivers and passengers, with the design focusing on the front row. Sitting in the driver's seat is relatively more comfortable. It feels more like a car when driving. The shift knob and various components are basically within easy reach. All above is the advantages of previous SUVs over traditional American minivans. The design of previous American minivan models was relatively focused on expanding the interior space. But now the situation is different. After the global version of the minivan model represented by Sienna launched in the US market, it can also be seen that the Sienna model has gradually focused on the feelings of front row drivers and passengers. The front row design will feel it's closer to an SUV model. After experiencing the TX model for the past 2 days, I feel that it would be better if the steering wheel could be extended further. In terms of storage space, the TX model is also very exciting, with storage compartments on the door linings, storage compartments and water cup holders on the center console, and its water cup holder can be taken out, which we talked about before. The storage space inside the armrest box is also large. We have seen more of the Sienna. In fact, if we don't really put them together for comparison, it will be difficult for us to intuitively feel the difference between the two cars. I sat in this Sienna. First of all, I can feel that the sitting position is much lower than that of the TX, but it does not give you the feeling of being stuck in it while driving. On the contrary, although the TX is relatively tall as a whole and has a relatively high sitting position inside, it still feels like you are stuck inside while driving. This is determined by the height of the center console and the lower edge of the side windows. Even though this car itself is not tall, it does have the feeling of supporting the body relatively high. The second difference is that the Sienna has better visibility than the TX, and it has better view. The front windshield and side windows feel larger than the TX. Sitting in the TX, you can feel that its hood is particularly long. In fact, the hood of this generation Sienna looks longer than its previous generation model, but compared to the TX, the front cabin of Sienna still looks relatively short. We have also discussed before that American minivans try their best to maximize the space, move the transmission shifting platform as high as possible, and create an aisle underneath. The design of this generation of Sienna is a bit closer to SUV models and sedans. The shifting platform was also moved downwards, and a platform was made in the middle. But currently, minivan models from other brands still retain the characteristics of American minivans. The seats are all from Toyota, and they all feel pretty much the same. It's just that TX has F-Sport seats. The Sienna's seats in this car are also very comfortable and good. The driver's and passenger's seat are both power adjustable, and the driver's seat's lumbar support is still 4-way adjustable. Previous American minivans and larger SUVs would have a height adjustable armrest on the front seats. On this generation of Sienna, it is designed with a fixed armrest. There is also a storage compartment underneath, but I still don't recommend that you put anything on this layer. In terms of materials, this limited version of Sienna has hard plastic on the top, some soft materials on the side edges, hard plastic on the bottom, soft materials, decorative panels, and hard plastic. When you sit in the car and look at the window frame, you can see the metal parts, but they are painted black. The material used for the door panel is soft material, leather on the top and hard plastic on the bottom. As a daily vehicle, there must be enough storage compartments and cup holders. I feel like Sienna did a better job than TX did on this point. There are 2 levels of storage compartments on the door panel, and the storage compartment below has many partitions and shapes. There are 2 cup holders on the center console, and 2 cup holders here. The center armrest box is very huge. In fact, we can basically see the difference in internal space between SUV and minivan models from the second row. The second row of most mid-size SUV models has a relatively high effect. The line of sight in the second row is relatively higher than that in the first row. Regarding the second row seat layout, There are currently more and more SUV models with the option of 2 separate seats. These are currently consistent with the minivan models. But we can see that in terms of space, this TX is not a small SUV. The size is even larger among mid-size SUVs. But its head space and various dimensions don't seem to be as exciting as the minivan. You can also observe the difference in space between the two cars when I sit in the video. Previous American minivans have always been good at changing the layout of the second row of seats. From now on, looking at the models represented by Sienna, it seems that the changes in seating layout is not so exciting and obvious. In terms of storage space, this car has a storage compartment on the second row of door panels, a storage compartment in the middle, a small storage compartment here, and storage space behind the 2 front seats. Sitting in the second row, you can see the difference in space performance. I feel that the Sienna's space performance in the second row is better than that of the TX in any dimension. Its second row seats are in the form of 2 exaggerated captain's chairs. If it were 2 ordinary seats, its space performance might be better. You can see that the second row also has a heightening effect, but this effect is brought about by the height of the seats, not by the lifting of the floor. You can see that the floor is very flat. The adjustment of this seat is relatively magical. Seat forward, seats to the back, put it in the middle position, the largest elevation angle, leg rest. In this way, it seems that everyone will have a more intuitive feeling about the performance of the second row of the 2 cars. The configuration of the limited Sienna has a small sunroof. The rear air conditioner can be controlled by zone, and a USB and Type-C charger socket at the back. The floor is very flat. There is a curtain, a storage compartment, cup holders on the door panel, and 2 cup holders in the middle. There are also 2 small net pockets in this area. There is a storage space on each front seat back. In fact, the biggest difference between these kind of mid-sized SUVs and minivan models is the third row and the trunk space after the third row is opened up. Now you can see that I am sitting in the third row, and its performance is not as good as Sienna. Even the space performance of the TX model is very good in this size of SUV, but the feeling in the third row is still worse than Sienna. You can see the head and leg room. This seat is still the farthest back and slightly forward position. Even if the space can come in, this seat still doesn't feel as comfortable as a minivan. At present, the third row of seats in this medium-sized SUV is mainly used for temporary short-distance use or children riding. As an adult, riding long distances for a long time may still be tiring. We have compared these mainstream American minivans before. At that time, we also found that the Sienna's third row did not perform the best among these products. But even so, I feel that the third row is much more comfortable to sit in than the TX's third row. First of all, in terms of space, you can see that there is no problem with the space, at least it feels better than TX. In terms of head and leg room, this seat just slid to the center position, not at the very front or back. Although the cushion of this seat is not high or long enough, it is more comfortable than the TX seat cushion. If it is said that the third row of seats in TX is only suitable for adults to sit temporarily, while the Sienna's third row of seats can accommodate adults for long periods of time. So we can see that in terms of internal space, the minivan model or the Sienna model may not be as good as the TX model in terms of the officially released size, but in my subjective feeling, I feel that the interior space is Sienna is much better than TX. At least in terms of space performance in the second row and third row, everyone can feel the difference so intuitively. And when the third row has this kind of space performance, the trunk space of Sienna or minivan is still wonderful. The Limited's third row has curtains on both left and right, air conditioning outlets, and cup holders on the left and right. There is a USB and Type-C charger socket on the right. In summary, this is the comparison video between Sienna and TX. In terms of driving experience, it can be said that the TX 500h completely beats the Sienna model. The most criticized thing about this generation of Sienna is its power system. Although its 2.5-liter hybrid has excellent max cruising range, its power is indeed average. Personally, I feel that the power is not as good as the previous V6 3.5 engine in many time periods and speed ranges. Furthermore, whether it is Sienna or TX 350, their braking performance is very average. Because this TX 500h is a top trim of series, its braking system has been strengthened. Braking performance is pretty good. Having said that, most of us buy vehicles of this size for the interior space. At present, the space advantage of minivan models is still unmatched by medium-sized SUVs. As the consistent view of my channel, in US market, if third row seat and trunk are both what your purchasing need, then minivan or those big American full-size models may be a better choice for you. Regardless of the size of these mid-sized SUV products, there are currently some space problems in the third row of seats or trunk space. I hope that through this video everyone will have a certain understanding of which product is more suitable for you, SUV or minivan. Of course, it is still the same words: buy which you like, don't control. Don't be shy. Thank you for the above video.